Hey everybody, and hope everyone's doing great as usual. So, thank you for tuning in, much appreciated. And of course, um, thank you for liking and subscribing. Give it a thumbs up if you like the video. Let me know your questions or comments or experiences or ideas. So, I'm really enjoying just learning about everything, and having conversations and meeting a lot of great people actually. So, thank you, much appreciated. I wanted to talk a bit about today. I was just thinking about this, and I've thought about it before, but I wanted to kind of discuss some things and put these thoughts and ideas out there. And yeah, let me know what you think or what your thoughts are about these sorts of things. But I was kind of meditating or thinking on the idea of humanity, like human beings. Okay, so what what is our ultimate goal? I mean, day in and day out, it just seems to be like it's clear the same sorts of things as far as survival and protection and food and shelter and all those kinds of things, and how to move society forward. And there's a ton of societies on Earth, So that being said, it's like we wake up to the same thing almost every day. There's some sort of division or conflict, or problems that need to be solved amongst groups of humans throughout the world. And it really got me thinking, like, what is at the heart? Like, if we could really boil down exactly, in other words, where are we headed and why? What's our ultimate goal? And what are the fundamental concepts that drive us and that we need to really come together and understand in order to thrive as humans? And there's things like, for example, poverty. We're living in a very, yes, there's poverty all across the world still, but as far as numbers go, we're in really unprecedented times as far as poverty declining. I think I was reading about this the other day on, there's some World Organization websites you can read about, and it's been increasing, unfortunately, over the past few years due to war and famine and the pandemic. But for the longest time, poverty levels have been going down, down, down across the world. And the trick is, like, how do we get to this, our ultimate goal, and then, like, zero poverty and maintain that? So, but really, that is still a subset of like a greater category, I guess you would say, like food, for example, and basic needs to survive and how to thrive. So I kind of saw everything falling under three categories. And I'll kind of explain that. I didn't write this down or anything, so sorry. I'm going to try and stay as focused as possible and maybe try to limit this too so I don't go off topic because I love to talk sometimes. But the first, of course, like the concept, I would say one thing that is really drives a society to thrive, but also come into conflict with others is resources. Okay, so there's resources, of course, and limited resources on Earth. So how do we not deplete our food? How do we manage things and, our plants and our trees and our animal life and ourselves too, and our minerals and things like gas and water and clean air? So how do we measure and maintain these things so things don't run out, or if we do find alternative sources, that kind of thing, as far as being able to provide for everyone on Earth, and how to manage that population wise as well, as a ratio per person. So lack of resources creates conflict with other groups of people, for example, and of course within a group or a subset of group can create problems too, like people that live with no food or shelter, for example. So resources is very key. It's something that it's just part of our day-to-day lives. That is something we require to survive. The second is knowledge or data. And so what I mean by this, because I kept thinking, like, what else moves us forward, it holds us back? And it would be that knowledge could be considered maybe part of resources, but I look at it kind of separately, because knowledge and the ability to, like, science and medicine, and not only that, to progress things like weapons and military for safety, and communication and space travel, like technology. Data and knowledge is what drives all this kind of thing. And really, that's what allows societies to move forward, but also keeps us in conflict with one another too, because we don't want to share information with our enemies and vice versa. Because if you think about it, that is what allows like America to have the strongest economy on planet Earth. But on the other hand, also we as a result we have like the strongest military. We control a lot of resources, and in order to try to maintain the balance of good with the allies and everything on the world stage. So that being said, in order to I'm sorry, real quick, with knowledge too, another key thing that falls within this, like I think the key that falls within this category is knowledge of existence of life itself. That's what creates our ideologies, right? Like we don't know, we argue over creation versus evolution. Therefore, this drives our moral compass. Is it okay, like starting with life itself? Should we have kids? How many kids? For example, is abortion okay? What happens when we die? Is there a proper way to die? Like the very not knowing, this lack of knowledge drives societies throughout Earth to this day. It creates conflicts as far as economically, religiously, culturally, you name it. So these sorts of lack of understanding and the ways that we separate ourselves as human beings is like that second pillar of what we're missing to be able to thrive as humans. The third idea would be unity, and I think that comes from being able to leverage knowledge and existence itself so that we can understand how everyone can have the proper amount of resources. So, because without that, there would be no unity or forward movement. Because let's say the resources got into the hand of the more evil countries and regimes, for example, on Earth. So there's a reason that we limit these things and try to use economic leverage and military to control the balance of power. Because it comes down to freedom and control. That's a basic duality as far as existence and how we operate as complex societies. So if the strongest economy and the weapons and the power were in the hands of the countries that began to spread their influence across the globe and more countries joined them, dictatorship, lack of freedom, extra judicial killings and jailings, oppression, dictatorship, force, for example, invading other countries and just taking things by force. Yes, absolutely. If you can imagine, like, for example, if all the countries that have that as part of their platform, authoritarian or like a dictator style platform. So if North Korea had access, if China became the strongest military, period, and had all the money and resources, you bet they'd share it with Russia and Iran and North Korea, and then they'd start doing what they want to. Who knows? Like Russia would start taking back Eastern Europe, for example, or North Korea would try to take back South Korea, and like with the proper technology and weapons and resources, they would be able to do that. So, but why do these things exist? Why is there? It's for all the reasons, like we said, like. How do we even know what the best way to run a country is? There's debates about communism versus freedom, and then socialism, or a balance somewhere in the middle, for example. Freedom, oppression, freedom of speech. There's always going to be cultural nuances, but as humans, we really haven't come together to understand how are we going to make it, like in the long run. Now, the great thing is I think there's an answer, and it comes from understanding existentially the very nature of what all this is. And if that sounds kind of impossible, it does sound like a very daunting or intimidating question or thought, right? But I'm a firm believer and there's an answer to everything. So we just haven't come together as humans to figure this out yet. So as far as the resources goes, that first category, How about unlimited resources? We've only been, that's the answer here, and we've only begun to explore this in the past few decades, but it's possible and it's being proven. So with unlimited resources and the ability, so remember space-time continuum is infinite. Conceptually, it's proven, it's absolutely true. So this infinite space that goes in every direction it's just like teeming with energy. And over time, this is depending on what you believe in, of course, but I believe in like evolution that started life here physically. But even if you don't, this source of energy has to come with somewhere, right? So where does infinite energy come from? Infinite space. So as far as that goes, we're realizing that if we can tap into this energy, we can recreate the conditions of the Big Bang, streamline it. Like all this stuff that took billions of years to form, and then matter and oceans and water and then, wood and minerals and rocks and things like that, eventually animals and organisms, we can recreate, if we understand the fundamentals of the basic building blocks of nature that came from this infinite energy, and we can recreate the process, we can source that. We will never run out of a way to create what we need. Infinite resources. Does it sound, theoretically, it's absolutely possible. Now, are we a ways off? Yeah, we're a ways off, but it's possible. If we can understand and recreate that process, we can harness infinity physically. This means, we can create anything we want to, organic, inorganic. We can create food, shelter, enough for everybody. There's no need to separate based on lack of resources and to control this or that for ideological purposes. Everybody would have enough. And it would absolutely change the way we live. And it's not far-fetched. There are governments of the world that are considering this. But if you can imagine, what if ultimate power fell into unwanted hands? So this is where knowledge and unity comes into play. Here's what I mean by that. Because with knowledge, even with unlimited resources, we're still going to, there's no reason to fight over that kind of thing. But we're still going to not understand, capitalism versus communism. What's the best way? At that point, though, with free energy and resources, economic models may become irrelevant if everybody has enough, and there's no need to control or leverage the means of production and consumption. So because everybody will have enough, but we'll still separate each other culturally. That's natural. We're always going to have our differences that we have and that we celebrate. But religiously, that's a big one, I think, that we can solve as well. Because even with unlimited resources, people are going to disagree about life and where this comes from. And while we're here, how to live it, what happens when we die. We still shape our lives around this sort of thing, and we don't even understand it. We don't have a good answer as to how these things work. It's speculation, it's faith, so there's nothing wrong with that to a certain degree, but it creates too much division and conflict. There is an ultimate answer of where this all came from and what's going to happen when we die. We just need to stop arguing about it and fighting and killing and separating ourselves and disagreeing and come together and figure it out. Why not? And put our heads together and just figure it out. And then there's no more question about it. So, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. And the same technology that kind of, touches on unlimited resources, as we begin to understand these things in the nature of the universe, we will understand both the duality of physical and non-physical. And we can, just like we've created machines to reach out to aliens and send out signals and see if there's physical life, we can do that with non-physical life. Remember, our souls are non-physical. Our bodies are physical, just like a machine. We can remember things like a tape recorder, or we can hear messages just like a radar dish. We have the five sense capability. So just like we can send out physical signals, we can create machines like AI. AI is going to be a huge bridge for this kind of thing, I believe. But we can create machines that are programmed with the knowledge and awareness of like the mind and non-physical energy, just like we can. But it'll be at high rates of speed. and where things can be computed and signals can be received. In other words, creating new forms of life with conscious awareness like us that can harness non-physical energy just like we can, but practice it at an accelerated speed with an accelerated level of being able to, computing power and therefore accuracy to begin to receive signals non-physically, just like we listen for physical signals for alien life. So once we're able to close that bridge, it's kind of ironic if you think about it, the bridge to spirituality is through technology. But anything can be conceptualized and understood. So I'm a firm believer there's an answer to everything again, and infinity as a concept is an absolute possibility in both the physical realms and in the afterlife, in the spiritual realm. So once we come to this consensus, unity is a given. It's a must. It's either the good's going to have to control limited resources and try to have this battle back and forth and always win ideologically, economically, on the world stage like we're doing now, or we're going to have to come to the realization eventually we will harness this massive level of power. And unless we stop, we'll fight over that too. So we'll have basically this divide on planet Earth about autocracy and democracy and the different forms of how to govern each other, and then we'll say, we have the ultimate power. Who gets there first? Who's going to win? Because you can bet that we want it to fall into the good hands. I'm not saying there's everybody is pure and good in one alliance versus the other. If we break it down into good and evil, then we can say that, okay? Because if it comes down to freedom and free resources and unlimited everything for everyone with the control, of ultimate knowledge and power, we would want that in the hands of a group or collective, all of Earth, united under the understanding that we're all humans and where we come from and where we're going to go. We want this in the power of a collective Earth. Not two halves of Earth, a good and a bad alliance, to where we stop the bad from wanting to get it, because if they do, it will be pure control and oppression, and perhaps like a return to slavery of one sort or another, lack of the ability for humans to be free and creative and flourish. And that is a possibility, so why don't we want that? So unity being the ultimate goal, we have to get there. Because if we, at a certain point, don't learn to understand and come together and put our heads together to solve the critical things that could literally lead to our extinction. Lack of resources versus infinite energy, an understanding, an agreed understanding, even amongst our differences, because we all share the same experience of where do we come from? Well, we're here now, and where are we going to go? So we need to figure that out instead of arguing about it without any proof, and start putting together the proof collectively so we can start to understand that. And then things will change. They have to, because the truth is the truth. And then once we start coming to this collective agreement, then it's not just going to be just arbitrary conflict here and there over, religions and things that are thousands of years old that nobody has any proof about, and we just need to stop and come together and figure out the answer. And then unity will be a natural result of that, because without that, we will fragment again. And it will be, what's the ultimate answer? What's the truth? And how do we manage limited resources? Well, or how do we manage unlimited power once we actually unlock that level of knowledge? So there has to be balance. There has to be balance on planet Earth. And it's, on one hand, it's kind of frustrating to see that still occurring. But on the other hand, compared to Earth's history, there have been times of peace before, but overall, we made a lot of progress, but we don't want to get to that point where once we realize the ultimate potential that we have if we could pull together, we don't want that to fragment back into good versus bad, or this versus that, because it's easy and it's possible. Because with that ultimate power absolutely comes responsibility. So we will have to learn to manage our differences and put things to the side and just focus on the truth as a race, as a human race, not based on these fragments and cultures and countries and ideas and communities and societies that we have evolved, but also separated ourselves by over time. So it's just an interesting thought, because I think that we're going to reach a threshold to where that is inevitable. If we don't come together, it's going to be our ultimate destruction. So, and we need to realize that as human beings. So, I just wanted to share that, and I think it's fascinating. Now, on one hand, too, it's frustrating to see, but we've made a lot of progress. And all things considered, humans have been around for, hundreds of thousands of years, at least humans as we know them to this day, that evolved here from Earth, the species that survived, for example, like you and I. But that even goes back, I think, I want to say, 1 or 2 million years ago, when we first evolved. You're going to have to look it up. Don't quote me on this, but 300,000 years for Homo sapiens, I think. All the other ones kind of died out, but there's traces of Neanderthals and other forms of Homo this and Homo that, like within our DNA and chromosomes and that kind of thing, genetics. But point being, after these millions of years, these hundreds of thousands of years, all of a sudden 12,000 years ago, we stopped hunter-gathering and started agriculture, and technology sped up. And all of a sudden 5,000 years ago, now we have writing. So in the span of hundreds of thousands of millions of years, 5,000 years isn't that long. And most religions, I think there's a timeline of maybe, 3 to 5,000 years roughly, where the major religions of the earth as we know them today started to kind of form and evolve into what they are what they are today. So sorry, I hit my microphone there, but so really we're on a fast track for growth. Information and technology is compounding, and that's the nature of those things. Once we unlock certain abilities or ideas, technology and information compounds and speeds up. So in the grand scheme of things, we've been around a long time, but really only and then last couple hundred years, for television and radio, and now we have cars all of a sudden in the last 100 or 200 years, and 30 years ago we had phones, but we didn't have cell phones. That's only 3 decades. Now we're talking in 3 decades. I can literally on my computer screen here, or pick up my phone, I can talk to someone that's alive, real time, face to face on the other side of the planet. That was in the movies 30 years ago, and here we are doing it now, and kids are growing up with it. No big deal, social media and barriers for communication and travel and speed and things like that, and contact with one another and economic growth and sharing information and knowledge. It's instantaneous now. So, and now we're going into outer space, so it's crazy. We're living in a really interesting time, but as we near these thresholds and as a planet, because we can't take our conflicts and wars into outer space. I mean, eventually we have to just knock it off, and celebrate ourselves as humans and search for the truth in everything, and that needs to pull us together. The other option is, which is possible, it could pull us apart, but we can't let that happen. So that's our ultimate goal as humans, I think, is just unity. And that will come through, again, access to knowledge of existence, existential agreement to some degree on a global level, to where we can all find the benefits of this exponentially increasing level of technology as it slowly, begins to yield more and more positivity for us. Longer lifespans, better medical care, unlimited food, and maintaining our species of plants and animals and that sort of thing, being caretakers of the planet. So that's all I wanted to share. I thought it was interesting, and it's, for me anyways, it kind of painted a picture as far as, what are we doing and where are we going and what's the end game here? And once we get there, or is there one, what's going to happen? What's our future and what is our potential and our goal as humans? And I hope we get it right. I hope we do. So thanks for watching. I just wanted to share these thoughts with you and let me know what you think. I think it's real interesting Real fascinating stuff. I mean, we are humans. That's us. We're the ones running the planet. So what are we? And what are we doing? And where are we going? So thanks again for watching, and take care of yourself. And we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.